This is truly a show that does not get its due. For those who don't know, Years and Years is a 2019 show written by Russell T Davies. Russell T Davies is very famous for many different TV shows like It's a Sin, Queer as Folk, Sarah Jane Adventures, Doctor Who Confidential. But this series, which is an alternate history sci-fi dystopian spec series that takes place through the 2020s, so it goes all the way up to 2029, shows us what life might have looked like in the future. And while a lot of this is speculative because the show was released in 2019 and is dealing with a decade in the future, they nailed a lot of stuff completely right. One of the show's main characters is T'Nia Miller, who you might remember from The Peripheral. The Peripheral, for those who don't know, is the 2022 sci-fi series by Amazon Prime Video based on the popular novel starring Chloe Grace Moretz. It started off really strong. It kind of fumbled around the middle, and it sort of left us anticipating a little bit too much and not giving us enough answers at the end. It was sadly not renewed for season 2. But T'Nia Miller also starred in this show, and she is sort of the matriarch of the Lyons family in Years and Years. Now, she is not a Lyons by blood, she's a Lyons by marriage, and she marries Stephen Lyons. Here's a picture of most of the family members. Now, this picture, and I think that part of the problem with why the show wasn't more just talked about was because a lot of the promo materials kind of made it seem like it was like a weird, like kind of sappy sitcom. Like, this show to me does not convey, this picture does not convey in the slightest what this series is about. But this is the Lyons family, and basically it's about a family who is just experiencing all of the political tumult that is happening in Britain at the time of the show's events. The show also stars Emma Thompson, who plays Vivian Rook. Now, Emma Thompson forever lives in my imagination as Professor Trelawney from Harry Potter. If you know, you know. But in this series, Emma Thompson plays Vivian Rook, who's this very far-right, like she's the leader of this quite populist alt-right type of party. And she gains a lot of traction right from the opening, like cold open of the show, by being incredibly crass and indifferent to the suffering of people outside of Britain, really engaging in populist sentiment about how she doesn't care about international relations or international wars or anything that's going on outside of Britain's borders. All she cares about is if her bins are taken out. This is meant to echo the sort of populist message that the right, utilizes in the United States. Figures like Donald Trump, figures like Mike Pence. The show, which The Guardian called 2019's most terrifying TV show, is so terrifying because it is so accurate and so uncanny to the events that we're currently living through. Victor Garaya, who is one of the Ukrainian characters on the show, who plays he plays Daniel Lyons' partner in life. And throughout the show, he's navigating a very, very complex, trying to immigrate. He becomes a refugee from Ukraine. Now, the show gets into some of the world events that are transpiring right now, accurately predicting just the general turmoil in Russia and the Ukraine. But more broadly talks about how the experience of trying to immigrate to another country, trying to seek asylum, even when you are a refugee, fleeing from a place that you would be imprisoned or worse for your sexuality or any sort of aspect of your being, it just shows how much bureaucracy and BS these people have to deal with and just how horrific it is, the conditions that people are under. So the show is, one, dealing with that plot line, while also very interestingly tracing the love story between these two characters. And it's also looking at how economic instability caused by geopolitical turmoil impacts people who, quote unquote, made all of the right financial decisions. Stephen Lyons, who is T'Nia Miller's character's husband. You can see here their daughter on the far right who's sitting down and their other daughter on the far left up there. They basically are the rich ones of the Lyons family. Stephen worked in banking. He had saved millions of pounds. He had lived in a $2-point-something million house. And due to a financial transaction that he made when selling the house to free up capital, all of his money was lost because there was a run on the bank. The bank was viewed as completely insolvent. The morning after he had made this transaction, and because banks are only, obligated to ensure whatever the local regulations are. I believe in the United States, I think it's $250,000 up to on a proper bank, a retail bank, like Bank of America or something. And then on a brokerage account, if you're investing money, I think it's up to $500,000. But in the UK, in this show, I don't know if this is how it is in real life, Oh my gosh, do you hear that noise? In this show, it's only 85,000 pounds. So this man who has, with his wife, worked their entire lives and who has actively, accumulated this huge fortune, he loses it all in an instant. And it shows how quickly economic instability can impact banking. And he suddenly is thrust from this kind of upper class person to immediately working class and has to drive a bike and deliver parcels. Another major plot line that is explored is with Bethany's character. Now, Bethany is kind of the techie of the family. If we go back to the family portrait, you see that she is here on the bottom right. She is the daughter of Stephen Lyons, who's sitting right to her left, and then her mother, Celeste Lyons, who's right above her. Now, right from the onset, we learn that Bethany doesn't really feel at home in her body, and her parents assume that her searches about becoming trans is that she wants to, in the conception of what is popularly known as trans, become transsexual, that she wants to either change her gender, change her sexual orientation. And so because they're very classically wealthy liberals, they're so accepting. But we learn actually that she doesn't want to become a different gender. She wants to completely discard her body and become transhuman. Now, transhumanism is something, I believe there's 2 million people who subscribe to this philosophy globally that are recorded. And these are people that believe that humans have not reached their final form until our synapses, until our thoughts, until our memories can be encoded into data and we can essentially live forever online. Now, there are some people, futurists like Michio Kaku and Ray Kurzweil, who begin to delve into this with thoughts on the singularity. You might have, read Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near, or Michio Kaku's The Physics of the Future. I mean, there's so many books about futurism written, but this is going to become a growing thing as we integrate further with technology. And I feel like the show is quite thoughtful in the way it explores this, but it also is quite honest in that this intergenerational divide so often, the generation above just can't even conceptualize what the kid is talking about, because they're like, what do you mean you want to leave behind your body and become data in living in the internet? It's such a fascinating plot line. So one of the reasons I love the show is because of that as well. It's just interesting. Now, one of the characters I also love is Edith Lyons. Edith is the older sister who is kind of absent for much of the Lyons' lives. They are really interacting with each other in a quite typical basis. They all live pretty close to each other. They get together for family reunions ever so often. But Edith is an activist, and she has been sort of gone since she could leave. She has been, protesting things, on picket lines. And the show's opening episode, which really excellently traces a large span of time and also a lot of tension, shows how there is, I don't want to reveal the kind of pilot spoiler because it's such a great cliffhanger, but shows how the physical effects of that activism on Edith. Her character throughout the series is one that is really fascinating and that I would love to talk more about in the comments. I hope y'all will go watch the show. Now, another character who I love, and thank you to Radio 100 for making this very, accessible chart, is Muriel, who's the grandmother and one of the other matriarchs of the family. And I like that the show explores the way that people of a different generation interact with technology. The sort of AI chatbot is called Senor on the show, which is similar to our Alexa Amazon speakers. And oh my gosh, did my Alexa light up when I said that? And yeah, I just love her plotline, and there's this really interesting kind of subplot about macular degeneration and how it's completely healed. So the show isn't all doom and gloom of the future. It also shows some of the scientific breakthroughs that happen. Now, I'm almost out of time, and I could probably talk about this show all day. I just recently rewatched it all, literally this week. I've seen the whole thing through probably 3 times now. I watched it once when it originally aired. It was very obfuscated naturally by the pandemic. I watched it again when I came home from grad school with my parents, and they really loved it. And then I just watched it again, literally finished it last night. The other character, I'm sure there's definitely more characters that I'm missing. I would love to talk about Edith's partner. I didn't really get into Rosie either. Rosie is very interesting because she's one of the poorer members of the Lyons family, and it sort of shows how the predatory populism, how she is kind of buys into Vivian Rook's populist ideology, but she also has a really cool arc of taking back kind of agency, which is really awesome. I'm out of time, but go stream this show on HBO Max, now called Max. It's still like such a weird thing to just call something Max, but it is, all episodes are streaming now. It is a really excellent show, and I just think that because of the pandemic and other big societal factors, this show kind of got swept under the rug. People sort of missed it. It didn't really get the press it deserved.